Good afternoon and welcome to RISmedia's Power Your Marketing, How to Attract and Engage Leads Using Property Data. My name is Cleve Gaddis. I'm coming to you today from Salt Lake City. I normally come to you from Atlanta, Georgia, where I run a real estate sales team in North Atlanta. And I'm also a coach with Workman Success Systems based out of Salt Lake City, Utah, and we help teams grow businesses that are worth owning and create lifestyles that are worth having all over the United States. And I'm always so excited to be able to moderate one of these events. We have the best panelists on a monthly basis. We have the best topics, but none of it could happen without our sponsor. And I'll recognize our sponsor, who is CoreLogic. You'll see on the slides, but I'll recognize Amy, who is the representative of the sponsor, in just a few minutes. But I want to make sure that we're all clear before we get started. We can use property data to attract and engage clients, but we need to remember the reason we're doing it. And in a lot of cases, it's so easy for people in the brokerage business to forget what business they're in. And the reality is that we want to have a good consumer experience. We want to have a good client experience, buyers and sellers. But really what we're trying to do is create consistency of income for our agents. Because the problem is there is so much brain damage in the way agents earn their income. You know, they make big money 1 month and they starve to death for 3 months, and they make big money the 4th month. And it's that inconsistency of income that really causes problems for most people who are in real estate. And it's really why the majority who try real estate don't make it. But if we can figure out how to engage people better using unique property data, unique market data, things like that, then we can contribute to a more balanced life and more consistent income for our agent population out there. Before we get started, I want to play a quick video. This is my first time ever doing something like this, but the one and only John Featherston wanted to be able to give us a brief message as we got started today. So I'm going to launch this. I'm going to load it up here, and I'm going to.
Hello, my name is John Featherston. I am the CEO of RISMedia, and welcome to RISMedia's webinar for real estate brokers, Power Your Marketing, How to Attract and Engage Leads Using Property Data, sponsored by our friends at CoreLogic. Property Data. Before we get started, by our friends I'd like to thank all of you for investing in your careers through attending our webinar series. I'd also like to attending our webinar series. I'd also like to take a moment today to alert you to an exciting new inspirational and motivational, as well as skill building event that we will be hosting and co-presenting with the National Association of Realtors on January 7th. That event is Real Estate's Rocking in the New Year. Now, Real Estate's Rocking in the New Year is an event for sales associates, team leaders, managers, and broker owners, and will be a combination of informative, motivational, and skill building sessions. There'll be 9 different sessions for agents and team leaders, as well as 7 different managerial sessions for brokerage owners and managers. And it's presented by more than 70 of the most successful and powerful real estate leaders, trainers, coaches, agents, team leaders, and brokerage owners from across the country, representing all different brands. Very powerful and successful professionals. They're all participating in this huge event because our collective goal is to help you kick off the new year fully equipped to make 2021 your best year yet. Now here's a quick video on Real Estate's Rocking in the New Year, and then I'll be back. Let's all kick off the new year stronger than ever before. I urge you to consider joining us by attending Real Estate's Rocking in the New Year. And if you're a team leader or you're a broker owner, let's give your sales associates a truly meaningful holiday gift, a gift that will keep giving back to your associates. A ticket to Real Estate's Rocking in the New Year. Individual tickets are available on RISMedia for as low as $50 each. And we are offering a discounted company and team package, making this educational and inspirational event affordable to all of your sales associates. For more information, see the following links on your survey forms from this webinar, or look for the information from RISMedia, which will be sent to you after this event. Let's kick off the new year stronger than ever before by attending Real Estate's Rocking in the New Year on January 7th. Thank you for your time, and I look forward to seeing all of you January 7th. And now let's get back to our webinar brought to you by our friends from CoreLogic. Hello, my name is John Featherstone. I am the CEO of RISMedia, and welcome to RISMedia's webinar for real estate brokers, Power Your Marketing, How to Attract and Engage Leads Using Property Data, sponsored by our friends at CoreLogic. Before we get started.
All right, guys, I got to figure this out for just a minute. I still got video going. Peter, I don't know if that's something you can help with.
Take a look at it, Cleve, but
all right, I think we're back. Do you see my screen now, Peter?
Looking great, buddy.
Awesome. Listen, I want to go ahead and move on. Thanks very much, John, for providing that. Anybody who is interested, please make sure you sign up for the event. I plan to be there. In fact, I'll moderate an event. If you have questions or any difficulties during the session that are technology oriented, please feel free to post your questions in the chat box or the question box, and we'll get you set up with an answer. I can promise you that. If you are able, stay on all the way until the very end. We've got some free gifts that we'll be giving away at the end of the session, and you certainly don't want to miss out on those. So real quickly, without further ado, our session today is sponsored by CoreLogic. We have a special guest, Amy Gorsey, who is the principal of sales and business development for CoreLogic Real Estate Solutions Group. She's also the executive product owner of Trestle, which is CoreLogic's Platinum RESO compliant data distribution platform. She is a technology executive with over 20 years of experiences with MLS and real estate technology, and is also the former president of Clarity, which was acquired by CoreLogic in 2019. Amy, why don't you tell us a little bit about CoreLogic and what type of services CoreLogic provides to brokerages like the ones we have on the call today?
Sure, thanks Cleve, and thank you to RISMedia and you as the host for inviting us to sponsor this. Looking forward. I heard a little preview of some of the stories, and nothing's better than a brokerage telling other brokerages how they're successful using data. So I want to make sure we use most of our time for that.
Sure.
But just a quick bit about CoreLogic. I think most brokerages recognize the CoreLogic brand, but maybe not necessarily a lot about what CoreLogic does. But we are the largest provider of property data in North America, specifically in the US, with over 98% coverage across the United States. And I think, what we've seen lately is that brokers are more interested now than ever in how they can leverage property data to compare it against other data records that they have in their solutions, and engage and attract more leads that way. And so the more robust information they have about a consumer, the better they can connect with that consumer at the right time. And I think Craig and Elizabeth both have really great stories about how they use data to do just that. And so from our perspective, in order to continue to compete, the brokers are interested in sort of leveling up their game, right? IDX data from the MLSs is great, but it's not good enough anymore, right? Consumers are voracious consumers of information. They want neighborhood data, public records data, all of those things that help produce the systems, you know, that the public wants to consume, but then also for that data to get used internally. We have things like sell scores inside our public records data that give a propensity score for someone to sell. And when matched up with other data that Craig or Elizabeth or another broker has about their consumer, they can really begin to hone in on what type of marketing they should be doing specific to that consumer. And I think that's really what we specialize in. And just happy to be here having a conversation about how data, even beyond property data, gets used in the brokerage today. So again, appreciate the opportunity. Love to get started here. Yeah. I think this is a really good example, you know, just of the various data types that get consumed by brokerages overall, but appreciate the opportunity to be here.
Well, and thank you so much. This would not be possible if it weren't for sponsors like you and CoreLogic. And I happen to be a big fan. I look at all the research that you guys send out. I devour it every single month. So we've got a couple of great panelists. We've got Liz Noonan, who is president and CEO of Houlihan Lawrence. She oversees all aspects of Houlihan Lawrence's operations, including the company's residential and commercial brokerage divisions with 30 offices and over 1,300 agents. She's the president and CEO. She is shaping Houlihan Lawrence's strategy with a focus on driving growth while preserving their legacy of exceeding expectations known to generations of buyers and sellers. We also have Craig McClellan, who was also from Atlanta, Georgia, just like I am. He was a top producing realtor before starting a small independent firm in Atlanta, and after his first year of business, he grew the firm to 23 offices, which is impressive, and over 1,100 agents before selling the company at the end of 2007. He joined Metro Brokers in April of 2008 as the director of strategic growth. I know he is a wonderful strategic thinker. After successfully rolling in over 30 companies, he was named chief operating officer of Metro Brokers in 2013 and vice president in 2018. We're going to start with Liz, if that's okay. And I'd love to kind of talk about the topic of how do we get agents to use property data to start engaging consumers. So talk to us a little bit about that.
Sure. Well, thanks. First, thanks for having me today. I had a great time in our pre-call and learning about things from Craig as well. So I'm looking forward to this conversation.
Wonderful.
I would say, you know, we're all about transparency at Houlihan Lawrence and believe that the more a consumer knows, the better informed they are to make their buying and selling decisions. So we want to give them everything that they need, quite frankly. So we supply our agents with the tools to help kind of create that flow of information. So first, with any tool that you want agents to adopt, you have to make it simple and easy. You know, as much set it and forget it as you can. Give them the ability to set up content in advance that will go out on a scheduled basis. For example, our agents can set up a contact to receive our quarterly report or even our monthly market report. And once they check off just a little box in the system, it's going to go automatically each month or each quarter, however the agent sets it up. So agents, you know, just don't have time to mess with something that requires too many steps. So you want to keep it simple. Also, things like a monthly market report that highlight area-specific data is a great way for an agent to keep in touch with a past client and keep them up to date with what's happening in their market. And it's also keeping the agent front and center on a regular basis with their past clients.
So when you talk about sending out monthly reports or even holiday cards and stuff, and you talk about incorporating market data, are you talking about a very complicated data set? Are you talking about very simple stuff? Give us some examples. And I know you sent me some that I was hoping to have included in the presentation. I was not able to do that, but give us some examples of the type of data your agents are using to connect with that consumer.
Sure. So one of our favorite reports is called the Market Overview Report, and it basically is a snapshot on a monthly basis to a client that can be sent to a client, and it gives just a snapshot of what's happening within you can do it either a school district or by town. It's going to list the number of active listings, the number of pending listings, the change from the year prior, so you know year over year what's happening, as well as the closed number of number of closed sales. It also reflects the median price, and again, the change over the previous year. So this is all data and information that, somebody that bought a house from an agent will want to keep tabs on what's happening in their market so that they can make decisions as to when they feel the time is right for them to sell. It's good for them to just stay on top of what's happening in their individual market.
And what's so interesting is your agents are getting full credit for everything that is communicated to the consumer, even though they're not doing any of it. They set it up in the first place, I would assume, and then they don't have to do anything else. Set it up, forget it, and just move on.
Correct. It's simple. It's attached to our CRM. Once they add a contact into the CRM, it's a matter of checking off a couple of boxes to make sure that their specific client gets what they need, and on whatever cadence the agent wants to send it, whether it's monthly or quarterly.
So one of the things I wanted to ask here is, as you're creating ways to better communicate with your prior clients, are you finding that you're able to attract a higher percentage of them to come back in and work with you again? I know in some of the areas where you do business, your market share is really outstanding, phenomenal. I mean, do you think all of the data production and communication you're doing has something to do with that?
I think so. In many of our markets, we have a 50% participation rate.
Wow.
That's, that we're involved in more than 50% of the deals in a given town. And so we can collect data, and that proprietary data helps us to better understand where our buyers come from. So it's a great advantage for our sellers because we know exactly where to focus our marketing efforts. So for our agents, for example, we create social media posts around this around the geographic data, so we can use that buyer data to attract sellers. And for example, we recently did a social media graph for each of our locations. So I'll pick the town of Larchmont as an example. In the month of October, Larchmont saw an increase of, I believe it was 51% of buyers from New York City. And so because we have that data, we're able to market that we have that data, and it's just a great way to attract sellers by letting them know that we know where the buyers come from, and we're going to target our marketing efforts toward them. And with that kind of a plan, you can look for perhaps less days on market because it's a more strategic marketing plan.
Well, and I saw that graphic that you sent over, and I'm disappointed that I don't have it to share with the group. But to me, that was the most impactful of all the graphics, is because you had, 55% come from here, and 34% from here, and 15% from here, and 10% from there. And I thought,
I was just going to say it's also interesting on a listing presentation because some sellers have a preconceived idea of where their buyer is going to come from, be it international or from another part of the country. And because we have access to this proprietary data, we can actually show them real numbers, real facts about where the buyers are actually coming from. Many people are surprised to know that the international buyers in Westchester County is a small portion of the business, and that many of the buyers are moving from within town, and they're just simply upsizing or downsizing. And then of course this year in 2021, we just saw such an influx of buyers from New York City, so we've been watching that very closely.
Yeah, I bet that has had a huge impact in your area. We have had some questions for the RISMedia folks about losing audio and video, and we've got a question about whether or not there are slides. Yes, there are slides. Hopefully you can see them on your screen now, and you should be able to get them. Actually, you'll be able to get the entire video recording of this on the RISMedia YouTube page once we're all finished. Robin is asking to see the graph. Maybe Peter, you and I can get together and we can figure out how to take the graphics that Liz was so kind to share with us that unfortunately I was not able to get into the presentation. Maybe we can send it out as a follow-up to everybody who attends. So if you don't mind, put that on your list. Let's move to the next topic, Liz, and thank you so much for your great information on that one. But so how are you using data? How are you using data to attract the right consumer, the right buyers, the right sellers for your business?
It's a great question. Our team is really focused on getting smarter about the ways we engage our existing audience. So we use Google Analytics.
Liz, can I interrupt for just 1 second? And so when you say your team, who is that you're talking about?
Our marketing team.
Got it. Okay, your marketing people, and this is your team that is driving everything all the way down even to the agent level.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Okay. Sorry for interrupting. That was rude.
No, that's quite all right. You know, our marketing team has worked on a lot of great tools. So one that I'll share with you is called Ad Builder, and it's another proprietary tool that we've created that is basically a social ads tool. It's available to all agents. In just a few clicks, an agent can create a paid Facebook or Instagram ad, reaching hundreds of engaged buyers, either living locally or within New York City. And the tool retargets people who have been to our website and or who have demonstrated an interest in real estate. Each ad is branded to the listing agent, lives on social media for a few days, and can be specifically geo-targeted. So you also automatically receive a report to show your clients the performance metrics to demonstrate the efforts that you've made on behalf of listing their home. So, you know, I was saying before too, we use the Google Analytics to understand physical locations of users, basically to inform content creation and where we place our media buys. And to give you an example, we created a fun short video for our agents to use on social media sites this summer that demonstrated that we have, you know, our finger on the pulse of where people are when they're engaging with us. So when the shutdown occurred and people left New York City, we could see where they went because our website traffic spiked from places like the Cape and the Hamptons and Martha's Vineyard and even the Jersey Shore. So we could change some of our media buys to run ads in those markets. And I just, you know, I bring this up just to as a way to share that paying attention is really important. And so watching these analytics and trying to discover the story that they're trying to tell you is important, because data is only good if you put it to use somehow.
Yeah, that is what powerful stuff. And the Google Analytics platform, I assume you're talking about I think it's free. Is that correct? I mean,
Yep.
yeah. That's amazing. It's very interesting when you think about it. You're trying to help your agents understand where to focus their efforts to attract the consumer, and it's almost like playing poker where you've got all the cards up, so you can see what everybody's doing and where they're coming from, but they can't see one another, and so you've got a very particular advantage. We are continuing to get questions from a couple of people who can't see the presentation. I think it might be an issue on their end. I apologize. But I think the display is working correctly. Liz, do you see it on your end? Craig, do you see it?
I see it.
I
Yep.
do, yeah.
Perfect, great. Sorry, I'm a little concerned that there's something wrong from a technical standpoint. But anyway, we're going to keep going on. So next, the question now is what's engaging and what's not. And so how do you determine how to message to your consumer? I believe I heard somebody mentioned on a webinar over the last week or two that, you know, you're communicating with one group of people who are ready to buy or sell in the next 90 days, and those are people who are ready to transact. And then you're communicating differently to people who are looking to buy in longer than 90 days, whether that's, you know, 6 months or 3 years. And I thought it was interesting because the ready to transact is one group, and then the still researching is another group. So how do you communicate with those different groups? How do you make sure that your message, you know, doesn't fall on deaf ears because people are not interested in it?
Is that for me or for Craig?
Oh, I'm sorry, Liz, that's for you.
Okay, sorry.
Yes.
I think it's really just paying attention and creating content for different consumers at different points within the well, I would say the transaction, but I just mean within that life cycle. You've got to have content for someone who's just purchased a home, content for someone who is just starting to begin their search, and content for someone who's, you know, looking perhaps to refinance. I think just keeping the consumer engaged by changing up the content that you're dishing out, but also checking along the way to see what their click rate is and what is getting their attention, and then you know you have a good idea as to content to focus on moving forward.
That's such an interesting concept. And so you don't always know that your right message is being delivered to the right consumer, but if you deliver enough of them often enough, then one lands with that particular consumer. Would you say that's a safe statement?
I would, and I think that it's all about, putting in checks and balances along the way to see what's working and what's not, and being realistic to say, something isn't working, let's cut it and move on and try a different angle.
And I'm telling you, every real estate agent and broker out there that I've ever known or met can relate to not knowing whether or not their investment in some type of technology or marketing campaign is working out, and to be able to have an understanding of what's effective and what's not certainly would contribute to your bottom line. Let's
Absolutely. Sorry, I was just going to say, we also use Google Analytics to demonstrate, traffic to a specific property page with a seller. You can build this information into a listing activity report that can be sent to a seller on a regular cadence, maybe even weekly. So it kind of can give feedback to the seller, show where the property's been advertised. It helps paint a picture for the seller of the week's activity, and it tells a story of what's happening in the market.
Yeah, that is such good stuff, and think of how impactful that is for a seller to be able to get on a weekly basis or a monthly basis, however often, that says, you've had 1,200 people that have, clicked on your listing, and you've had 50 saves or whatever. A lot of them are accustomed to doing it through Zillow themselves, but when you can provide that for them on a brokerage level, I think that has got to be very, very powerful. I know that your firm, Liz, and your firm, Craig, they have significant market shares in their respective areas. And I know that both of you use data for your local market to sort of tell the story, meaning tell the story as to why somebody should use your firm over someone else's. And so, Liz, I'd love to get your comments on this first, and then maybe we can loop Craig in as well, because I know that's an area where they really focus on in the Atlanta market.
Sure. Well, I touched upon it a little bit. I think that one of the things that differentiates us in the marketplace is the fact that we have the proprietary data of where the buyers come from. And that's a great story for us to tell on a listing presentation, because it lets them know that we are going to, target the specific areas where a buyer is likely to come from for their particular home. So that's one thing that we're particularly proud of, because it's something that no other broker in our market can tell that same story the way we can, with such surety.
That's amazing. Now, do you also do some market statistics that shows how your firm might compare to the average agent in the market? Do you do some of that?
We do. We typically we provide our agents with a lot of different social media content that they can share. And so actually, in the month of November, we did a whole campaign around numbers, because to us, the data is so very important. So the first round was social media posts titled, Numbers Don't Lie, and it just talked about different sets of data. And the next set, the next week, it was Numbers Tell It All. And with that, some of the social posts that we had showed graphs of our market share compared to our next 3 or 4 competitors. And it was like a moving video of the graphs. It was kind of fun, and the agents love it, and they love to share that stuff on social media.
So do you find, before we ask Craig to make a comment on this last one, do you find that sometimes you give agents data and they don't really know exactly how to explain to a consumer as to how that data affects them? If the average home price in a certain area is up 3%, then it could be that your average homeowner in a certain area has got $35,000 more equity now than they had a year ago. How do you help your agents really communicate how this data affects the end user of the data, or the buyer or the seller?
It's so important to train the agents so that they understand the materials that you are, giving them to use. They are powerful pieces, these data points that we can share with our sellers, and they're only as good as if they're being used. And so it's important to make sure that the agents understand the story that the data is telling. And it's something that all of our office leaders talk about in their weekly sales meetings with the agents, and they go over these reports really weekly. Again, our favorite one is the market overview, and it's great information, and we make sure that the agents understand what the report is telling them so that they can share that with their sellers and walk them through it as well.
Love it. And when you give the agents that information, what are the odds that every single agent understands it perfectly? I mean, would you say that's like the odds are like slim to none? And so you got to keep.
You know, I think we also do a good job of making the reports easy to read, and so they're not overly complicated. You know, it's something that a seller could study the report and also get a picture of what it means without necessarily needing to be explained, you know, exactly what it means. So we do a good job of trying to, again, keep it simple for the consumer too. Pended sales, they pretty much know what that is. Active listing inventory, solds, we keep it simple and to precise information that would be important to them.
Love it. Thank you so much. Craig, tell us a little bit about telling your brokerage's story through local data.
Clive, I don't think I've stayed calm and quiet for as long as I've just done. So I'm gonna do my best to answer quickly, and then, you know, we can move on to the next questions or whatever. But I wanted to say that thank you for having me on, Elizabeth. Fantastic job. I think you run an outstanding company, and it proves it, because you know your numbers, you know your data, you know where you're headed. And I just want to point out that our role in the industry is to educate consumers. If we all agree that it is to educate consumers, then data plays a significant role. It plays a significant role in understanding our company, but also in differentiating our company and educating that consumer. So everything that Elizabeth spelled out about, you know, simple data points for agents to articulate how their firm can better support that stage of life where the consumer is just absolutely brilliant. So let's get to your question, Clive. What did you want me to articulate or answer at this point?
So just how do you use data to tell your brokerage's local story?
I think data is so critical to tell your story, whether you're a large firm, like I have 2,500 agents in Atlanta, or you're a small firm of 100 agents out somewhere, or 20 agents or 10 agents as a team, whatever it is, you have a specific story. You have a niche in the market, you have a segment of assets that you sell, whether it's price point, whether it's zip code based, whatever it is, you know, you have a specific niche. And identifying that niche actually is your story. And I know that sounds absolutely crazy, but when you look at your data and you look at the houses you're listing and transacting and the consumers you're supporting, there is literally a story in there saying, hey, we outperform others in this subdivision. And a story as simple as that shows the consumers out there that I need to work with Clive's company, because for some reason, whether he's tracking down buyers from other states, whether he's using data points, whatever he's doing, he's outperforming, and I got a better shot of driving a higher return on my asset by using Clive to sell my asset in this subdivision. And that's I think the crux of that whole story is, you know, understanding your story, seeing your story in the data, and then making it really simple to articulate for agents and consumers to digest that and understand why you're different in that market set than someone else is.
And Craig, I would guess that the difficulty in that is really finding the story. So you have to be looking at the data and seeing what story it tells, and then certainly trying to make that story fit, you know, some particular advantage that your company would have that would mean somebody needs to work with Cleve Gaddis or another agent with your firm. And so that's some great information, I know. And Liz, thank you so much. You're just a wealth of information. I look forward to doing another one of these panels with you again, and we'll certainly loop you in here in just a few minutes when we're going through Craig's portion. But Craig, talk a little bit about how you use data for business planning. That was something that you were fairly committed about doing and felt fairly strongly about. So what is it? What kind of data are you using, and how are you using it for business planning purposes?
So you touched on something, and we'll jump into the business planning, and it kind of dovetails into it perfectly. But I'm a big advocate of, you cannot run a business by POYB. You can't pull it out of your butt. So I mean, you literally have to have the data points. And I mean, I think everybody would agree with that. And that's where CoreLogic has all this data set that can start that story, and you tracking what's going on at your local operation, like Elizabeth is, completes the story. Neither of them you can't be independently successful without either side. It's a yin to a yang. So you got to put the two together. But telling the story about the data for business planning, it tells you where you've been and where you're going. It removes all the emotions of what you think. I love having business meetings and people say, well, what I think is going on. I said, wait a minute, we need the data set we have the numbers, we can actually spell out what actually is happening, and that's how we need to make business decisions on where we're going to drive the company. So saying, I think we get 50% mortgage capture is significantly different than saying, hey, in homes that are $200,000 to $350,000, we have 75% mortgage capture, yet on homes that are $450,000 to $800,000, we have 12% mortgage capture. That tells the story. That allows us to properly position our business and our assets, right, to align with the direction. Obviously, we have better capture in a price point than a higher bracket price point.
Very interesting, because then you either double down on the price point where you're already successful, or you have different marketing messages for the price points where you're not successful. And so I can see how that data and level of understanding would be so important in helping move your business forward. So let's talk about, and this should be a subject that is true to the hearts of everybody who is listening. If you're broker owners or managing brokers or some type of team leader, you know, the name of the game is on the brokerage level, you need to produce enough company dollar in order for the company to be profitable. And certainly I think everybody would have had to have been asleep or under a rock for the last few years not to understand the pressure that is on company dollar as commission rates increase and company dollar decreases. But let's talk about how you're using data, consumer data, to help you generate more company dollar, and how you're getting your company involved in the process of selling the homes, or helping the agents do all of their lead generation and conversion to sell the homes, because I think it's fascinating.
Well, I think, you know, so to start the conversation, I mean, for years, we've all told agents, you've got to do this, you got to use these tools, you got to use these resources, this is how you should run your business, you got to use these data sets. And we haven't always run our operations that way. It's kind of like you're not practicing what you're preaching. It's one thing to go out there and create a bunch of flyers and tell agents how to do it, but it's totally different to actually mobilize around it internally and actually run the company that way. So, you know, as compressions or as commission has been compressed at the brokerage level, right, we have to find ways to pay for utilities and square footage and technologies and tools to support and prop up those agents. So a big initiative for us has been building out company generated teams at the company level that supports newer and mid-level agents in closing transactions to help them build their book, right? Like that makes good sense, and it actually helps with that compression of commissions that are happening across the board for us to capture more business in-house. We're running a business model of running, you know, databases of consumers and maturing them through the pipeline, through the funnel, and then handing them out to agents as company assigned business for them to transact.
And so basically, I mean, you're getting in business with your agents. You're almost like partnering with your agents. I would assume you have some type of sales manager or team leader that actually maybe is an employee of the brokerage, and they're running the team just like you would run a team if it was an independent team. Is that right?
Yeah. So if you sign an independent contractor with an independent contractor agreement with me, I would assume you're in business with me.
Right.
So you're already in business with me, and the relationship is you pay me a portion of the commissions for me to provide tools and resources and support, brand, image, look, feel, you know, offices and things like that in order to prop up your business. So I'm already propping up a foundation underneath you. So for me to go to the length of saying, hey, we're going to mature books of business to assign lead source to you, I just see that as a complement to what we're already doing. Instead of thinking we're in partnership with, I'm already in partnership with 2,500 agents in Atlanta. Otherwise, they would leave, right? Because you would vote with your feet. If you're not happy with what I'm providing on my side for the compensation model that I'm providing, then you would leave, right? So we're already in partnership. So this is the next level of it, saying instead of you having to partner with Zillow and Realtor.com and everybody else out there, we're already in business. Right. Why don't you partner with me? Why don't I use the tools, resources, reach that we have at scale of maturing business and handing it to you on a compensation model?
Yeah, that's so very powerful. Liz, do you have any tips or things you want to share about, you know, using data to increase your company dollar?
I mean, you know, I think
that's a loaded question.
No, I just didn't. It's such an
everything we do is to try and generate more company dollar, isn't it?
I mean, I think so. I just didn't know if you had any other tips or tricks or ideas you wanted to share.
I mean, we're doing a lot of similar things to Craig, although not to the same level as he is. I'm gonna be reaching out to him after this.
Yeah, I'm impressed with what they're doing. Amy, do you have any industry insight of how people are, how brokerages are able to take market data and increase their income from that? Do you have anything?
Yeah, I mean, I think Craig has called some of it out, right? Kind of augmenting all of the data that brokerages inherently collect about their customers and clients as they nurture them, and augment it with sort of, property data, right? How many assets do they own? Maybe not just in the area you're working with them, but across, the entire United States. What are their mortgage balances? Those kind of things that help you to better understand your clients are things that we're starting to see brokers kind of take on as their core value prop, so that they can help advise the consumers. I think that was a really great point Craig made. As real estate professionals, their job is to help the consumer understand. And so the more insights that brokers can empower themselves and their agents with, I think the more they can do that. And we're sort of seeing that more and more as something brokers see as kind of their core function, as opposed to sort of abdicating it to a technology provider. Not that they won't hire a technology provider to help them, but I think kind of that taking responsibility for diving into your own data and how you can match it up with augmented data that you can get from your own website, from maybe from CoreLogic or maybe from somewhere else, helps to really start to tell the story and get that personalization down to the consumer level, so their story. And that's just kind of more of what I see is just a high level of personalization down to the individual consumer, because there's so much more information available than there was before. We lost him.
Hi, it seems this is Peter with RISMedia. Sorry, Cleve just informed us they must have had a transformer blow where he was doing the show from, so he is offline, although he was going to try to bring it back in.
I can jump on the last two questions. I know what they are.
Oh, that'd be great, because I don't have control of the slide presentation.
It's fine. So I will talk about, one of the questions was leading into is, what are we doing at the local level with databases? And we kind of have a philosophy that's a little bit different. I think it's important to understand the philosophy, and that is that instead of just engaging consumers at the point they're ready to buy or sell, we're actually creating databases that are more like an SOI database, where we always reach out to them. And when we put a lead in that database, we put consumers' data or content in that connection information, then it lives forever. Because it's a big belief, is the reality is like, well, wait a minute, we're just assuming that for this 3-month window, it's a viable lead. Well, the fact is it's an email address to a human being that may transact 2 years from now, or may transact 30 minutes from now, or may buy a vacation property, may buy a condo for their daughter that's going to college in, down in town or something like that. There's all these life events that happen, and to think that we can measure and have the perfect timing on a database, the only way that can happen is by nurturing them for a lifestyle forever. Like, it should never end. And that's what I think that a lot of these companies have done a great job doing, is like, people don't go to Zillow because like right at this very moment I want to buy a house. Like, they go to Zillow because they want to peruse and they want to browse and they want to play around on the site and do things. But what's interesting is those data points from them going on the site, just like Amy was articulating, those data points tell a story about what's their maturity in the life cycle. Like, are they top of funnel? Are they middle of funnel? Are they ready for a phone call? And the better we can, work that workflow, the better result or conversion we'll have with a pipeline. So right now we run over 750,000 people that are in a database, that are on a platform called ActivePipe, that we're constantly sending drip campaign information. It's everything from, hey, check out these funky $1 million mansions, to look at these vacation rentals. Hey, here's what your average sales price is in your neighborhood. Here's what's happening with the local restaurants, like all that kind of content, just to keep them, just to find some level of engagement. And then we track when they click on that content, and that tells us, hey, are they ready to move to the next stage? Like, realistically, because of the fact they're clicking on restaurants or clicking on homes that have offices in them, they may be ready to get, for us to track them on Google and start, retargeting them through social media. So that's that next level, right? So we retarget them and mature them down to a higher activity level. And as they move down, then they get a phone call from the call center. We'll call them up and say, hey, we're just reaching out. We noticed you're clicking on everything like crazy and want to know if you're interested in buying or selling a house. Can we come along, next to you and support you through a transaction? They say yes or no. If they say yes, then, we have the opportunity to assign them to an agent. So, and here's the thing, that doesn't end. Then that client comes back in the database. And this is not earth shattering. This is what we've been telling our agents to do for decades. It's like, follow up with your past clients. But yeah, don't worry, I'm not going to work a database, but you should. So, that's the piece of the model. And what that does, that Clive was pointing out earlier, is that allows us to keep that commissions in-house, which allows us to have profitable revenue models inside the brokerage company, that we can go out and buy more tech tools, and we can support agents, and we can build a better brand, and all those great things. So it's running a good business model. I think that you can really dive into that piece of it and have a lot of fun with it. But just changing that mindset of going, wait a minute, a customer is a customer for life. Like, why should we ever stop? Why should we focus all our data points on a 3-month life cycle of 1.2 million clients and try to target it right at the right moment? And that's what I think is so funny. Zillow created an animal, and all these portals, if you look at their numbers, and then a lot of them are publicly traded, so you have 190 million people that hit a site in a month, and everybody's like, but there's only 5 million that buy. It's like, but wait a minute, they have their attention. Do you? You have the data set to do it. The question is, will you take on the challenge? Because if you don't, they'll be more than happy to sell those eyeballs to you later for a referral fee, and you should happily pay it, because the fact that you didn't take on the initiative of using the data to build out my business model in a way that I have their attention in some capacity, right? So anyways.
That is such a good point. We must have had a transformer blow here in Salt Lake City, because our internet went totally out after a fairly loud boom. So I'm glad to be back. And Craig, I should have known you would have been able to take over for me, brother, and I appreciate that. I owe you big time. So you let me know when you need me to cover for you at some point in time. I don't know if you finished all of the different discussion topics. The last one for you was basically the content about the local address isn't enough anymore. Did you get into that and dig into that a little bit?
I didn't. I think that, that's where we're leading. We're talking about the database and really having systems and tools in-house. And for everybody online, I can spell out the tools. It's ActivePipe. We use a tool called Brightcore, which is, that's where we mature it at the call center stage. And then we use e-relocation to track them, but we do assignment directly out to the agent. And here's the earth-shattering lightning strike moment, hopefully not out in Clive's house, but the lightning strike moment is the fact that once they transact, they go back into ActivePipe. If they stop connecting with the agent, they go back into Active. They go back top of funnel and start being worked again at that top level. So the thing was, is the address enough? And no, it's not. Like, if you're trying to keep someone's attention, you have to have relevant content that's relevant to them, right? And you have to have something they can't necessarily get everywhere. It doesn't mean that it can't be public information, but it's got to be something that's more difficult to find. Like, Elizabeth has this great story. I just love the story with her company, is that we know where buyers come from. So that tells the story that we know exactly how and where to market to drive, buyers that are coming from that area to buy your home at the highest practical price. Like, that's a very brilliant story. And, she has data sets that you can't just readily get everywhere. Like, would that be powerful if you got an email that said, hey, by the way, we know what your Zestimate is on your house. We know your address. We know it's pink. We know you have, green porcelain toilets. But the reality is, we also know there's 176 buyers that are over in Connecticut that are in this one town that are all moving out of that district, and they're all moving here, and we know them. Like, that's freaking brilliant. Like, that data point separates you from the update that comes from your local generic technology you signed up for in 1982, and they're still sending you the drip campaign, right? That's the same data graph. Like, that's the differentiator, and that's what we're talking about, is how do you differentiate?
So let me ask each of you a question. So when I hear, Craig, you explain, they come into this system, and then when they come out, they loop back into this system. I'm a sales guy, so that overwhelms my brain thinking about, how do I process all that? How do I figure out how to make that work? So what processes and systems and departments do you have in place that helps, kind of build out your workflow? How do you do that?
See, and that's where I think it's important. The reason why we're coming alongside the agents and helping build out is I have 167 employees, right? So I have employees in different departments. I have a call center with 11 people. I have, a marketing department with 5 people. And like, we have those pieces in place. And I think the most important thing is it's less about the tech tools. And I hate to say that because I'm a tech guy. I have investments in a lot of tech companies. It's less about the tech tools. It's more about the philosophy. So the philosophy is a client is a client for life. And you build your tools, whatever the name of the tools or the technology you use, whether you're building it out in an Excel spreadsheet or you're using some sophisticated tool that pumps in APIs out of CoreLogic or whatever it is, like the fact is everything should be, your North Star is everybody's a client for life. And I'm constantly growing that database, and all my tools are to constantly engage that database and find out, are you at the moment yet? Are you at the moment yet? Are you at the moment yet? Because constantly you have a percentage of them that say, yeah, I am at the moment. And then, yeah, I am ready to meet with you. Yeah, I am ready to list my house, whatever it is. But if you don't have their attention, you'll never get their business. That's just a reality, right?
And that's why I think it's so important then that agents have availability, content available to them for the life of the client, because it's not always going to be about their need to buy or sell. It's, they're in a home and they're going to be there for the next 4 years. So now let's supply them with, calendar information of things to do within the community, again, to keep the agent front and center.
Mm-hmm. Craig, I think you mentioned on our kind of prep call that, and you might have mentioned this while I was off, and if I'm asking you a question that you've already covered, I apologize, but you talked about educating people on the new home community opportunities and things that are happening in and around an area. Did you talk about that a bit?
I really didn't, but I mean, that's part of expanding beyond just that generic content of what's going on with average sales prices and things like that. It's about, having relevant information about what's going on with the schools. I mean, we had some information that we sent out because there were some big road plans, reconstruction of the infrastructure of the interstates, on the north side of town. Right. And we sent out some of that content to the local communities, and we got more thank yous saying, I didn't know. Like, I saw the construction going on. I didn't have a minute to pause. And now they see us as a resource of that information. So stuff like that is like stuff that sets you apart and saying, hey, I'm not just going to give you this estimate you could get whenever you want to. I'm going to give you this other content, right, that is about our community, that localizes and humanizes my relevancy to educate you through a transaction, whether you buy or sell, right?
Information that becomes much more meaningful to them. Liz, any additional data you're doing to go a little deeper than just the property address or evaluation?
Just really everything about, gosh, I think about this year, 2020, we had the shutdown, and New York and Connecticut, where we have offices, both had different state mandates. It was communicating to our clients all about that information. So it's not just always about data and numbers and where your price is in your community right now. It's just keeping them educated on all kinds of things. But again, Craig just sort of said that as well.
Sounds to me like it's about educating them on life, because their life is more important to them than anything that we probably would want to speak to them about. Amy, have you seen any best practices for brokerages in terms of managing data? I still want to go back to this. When I start thinking about all the data that gets used, and Liz says, well, we're just educating them on stuff that would be meaningful, but you can't do that if you don't have your data set up correctly to do that. You can't do it at all. And so what do you see people doing that helps them stay on top and manage that flow of data so that what gets from here to there and everything is working, so that when Liz's agents send out their next email newsletter, it's to the most current database that they have? How does all that work?
Yep. And listen, I think it's what you send out is very dependent upon, to Craig's point, where they are in the funnel combined with market conditions, right? I happen to live in Boise, Idaho. It's a totally crazy market here. The AVM literally changes every month. I like knowing that, right? So that's different. If you live in a market where the AVM is changing every month, then sending them an AVM along with some other information every month makes sense. But if you live in, middle America, where your home values just aren't changing as quickly, to Craig's point, who cares, right? About sending them an AVM every month. So
This is the 40th time we've told you your house was worth $200,000.
Exactly. Oh, it went up $20. Super.
Or less.
You know, I'm super excited to list my home. But so I think it's very contextual to both kind of where they are in their process. And I love that Craig talks about, you know, the various phases and having content for everyone, but also the market conditions, right? Because listen, I'm not thinking about selling my home, but people knock on my door about once a month right now. That's how crazy it is here, right? And so it starts your wheels turning about, is it time, even though you're not thinking about it. And so I think having that very personalized understanding of both where your consumers are combined with, you know, the market conditions helps you to deliver the most robust. And that's the level of sophistication I think we're seeing out of brokers today, as opposed to that kind of one size fits all, you know, here's your recipe card, here's your AVM, here's your, you know, kind of a thing that we used to say.
And I'm gonna add a little bit to that, and I'm gonna call you out a little bit, Amy, on the fact of like, I assume you like data, so your AVM is probably like excites you because your personality, just from your
Sure, of course.
resume, like so there, you know, remember when you're marketing top of funnel, like when you got a swath of people top of funnel, they all haven't identified they want to transact yet or sell yet. So you have to have, like, that has to be a broader scope of data you're sending out. So I would say, hey, like maybe there's 50 different data sets you set out top of funnel to 100,000 people. But then when they identify and they engage with your communications, then it gets a little more narrow. Like maybe your data set is 5 different data points you're sending out. Then they really identify that they're a seller or they're a buyer. Well, then you're down to like 2 or 3 data sets. So, you know, remember that in your funnel is like the goal is to, you know, everybody's always top of funnel, playing that top of funnel. The question, who's going to poke their head up and kind of drop down one level? And that's when that data set or that message starts to refine more about real estate and less about community. But, you know, when you're marketing to 1 million people, a message, it should be a broad message, because something may be exciting to Amy and Cleve totally looks it over, and Elizabeth is like, I can't believe they send this to me, right? But then you send out something different and Elizabeth is totally engaged, and, you know, Clive hits unsubscribe and like all those great things. So it's like, just think of that broad, then narrow it down, then narrow it down, then narrow it down. Then when they transact or don't transact, they go back up to broad, like they go back up to that marketing message. And that's that lifestyle of, I just want their attention for some reason forever. And I know that sounds like a heavy lift, like Clive is like, boom, like what? Forever. But the reality is like, that's how the majority of these marketing tools are created. They're created to incubate forever. Just the messages aren't very broad right now, right? So the address and the content is specifically needed at a stage. The challenge that I'm saying is there's stages above that you can leverage and build a business on. You have a predictable business, and you're outflanking, you know, it's not that hard with how far technology has come, with how far social media has come, with how far like our ability to engage consumers at a local level and at a broad level, like the tools and resources we have at our fingertips are very inexpensive. Yep. And they're very accessible. It's nothing like it was when I was selling real estate, you know, 10, 15 years ago. It's nothing like when Clive was selling real estate 25 years ago. I mean, no, I'm just kidding. I'm just giving you a hard time. But the reality is like technology is really advanced, and the consumers are very engageable, and sending those messages out is very inexpensive. So my biggest thing is don't overthink it. It's better to send something out than nothing out. Figure out what your story is, and start building a business around it, you know?
Thank you very much, Craig. Liz, thank you so much for coming and sharing and letting everybody see behind the curtains just a little bit into your businesses. Very nice of you to do that. Amy, thanks to you and CoreLogic for sponsoring this. Wouldn't be possible without you. We do have a free download. Unfortunately, I don't have any controls on my end now to even know what I'm showing you or not showing you. But if you'll take down the address of workmansuccess.com/property data, again, that's workmansuccess.com/property data, you can get a free download of our Double Your Listings in 120-day program, which takes doubling your listings in 120 days. It divides it into 5 steps, which would include educating consumers on the market, learning how to communicate from a more emotional standpoint about what might be holding buyers and sellers back, upgrading and updating your pre-listing and your listing marketing package, learning how to do everything virtually that you used to do physically and in person. And then the last step, believe it or not, is prospect, prospect, prospect. And it's great because it shows you exactly what to do, and then it gives you all of the tools and the resources so that an agent, if you shared it with them, or you would know exactly what you needed to do in order to move forward. I appreciate, Craig. Thank you very much for covering for me while I was gone. Amy, Craig, and Liz, thank you so much for your time today. I appreciated being with you, and I look forward to talking to all of you soon.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Amazing.
Thank you.
Pleasure being on the panel with you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.